Dave Palumbo here with Muscle Serpents Daily, and guys, it's Wednesday, and Wednesday's an insane day for me, not only because I got a lot going on in all my businesses, because today is feeding day here, and we got all the delivery of all the live mice and rats in, and you know what I figured? I figured, what the heck? Let me go over how I decide what to feed the various animals that I have, because a lot of people don't know what prey to feed. Now, I like to feed frozen thawed rats and even small rabbits to the big snakes. So the berms, the carpet pythons that are large in size, and my big boas, they all get frozen thawed, and they take the food very readily. I don't have to worry about it. That's easy for me. But ball pythons and baby snakes don't like frozen thawed food. So I have too many snakes to even deal with it. So I have a guy, luckily for me, who delivers to me. So let's look at some of these rats and mice, and I'll explain to you how I decide what I feed what. Let's start with the babies, all right? What I do is with newborns, ball pythons and boas, I like to feed what I would call mice fuzzies. You can look at them. They're really tiny. I could even take the top off here where you can see it a little better. And they've just got their hair on them. They really are not, they move, but they're not like hopping around or doing any kind of craziness. It seems like the smaller snakes, like the carpet pythons, and even the smaller ball pythons, and definitely the boas, do very well on these. For some reason, boas don't like anything that's too big when they're babies. And so I try to give them smaller. I think when you go with smaller prey than a snake really needs, you're better off. Because when you go with bigger, it intimidates them, they wind up not eating it. Okay, so that's what I start with. And so the ball pythons, after one feeding or so, they're ready for hoppers already. They really can handle a bigger prey than most of the other snakes, which doesn't make sense because you think carpets are a bigger snake. Carpets, when they're babies, are teeny. They're teeny tiny. And the same thing goes for, boas. A lot of the boas are really small. Come over here and take a look at these carpet pythons. Here's a baby carpet. Look how tiny that snake is. Tell me that snake cannot eat anything bigger than a fuzzy. And a lot of times you almost want to feed pinkies to them, but they don't seem, carpets like movement. So if the thing doesn't move around, they won't eat. And that's why carpets are very hard to get feeding, because they're so teeny tiny. Now, contrast this with a ball python baby, and this is only like, a couple-week-old ball python. Look how much bigger that is. That snake could handle what we will call hopper, and I'll show you a hopper in a minute. I started off on a fuzzy just because I want to make sure it starts eating, but right after that, these ball pythons move right up pretty quickly. Now, boas, on the other hand, are also pretty. You would think that they're big snakes, right? But when they're small and they're babies, they don't eat. Look at this. They're not that big, and because they're not that big, and they seem to regurgitate really easily if you give them prey that's too big. I stick with very small prey for the first couple months. I underfeed these things with small prey. Once they get developed and they start putting a little size on, they can pretty much handle anything. They become bulletproof. Now let me show you what I would consider a hopper. These are hoppers, okay? The reason they're called hoppers is because they hop. And you gotta be careful because they will hop out of the container and they will get away. And these will drive you nuts because these things are almost impossible to catch once they're running around your snake room. They're really fast and they're small and they're very hard to catch. And I'll tell you something about mice. When you catch them, they will bite you. Mice have sharp teeth and they love to bite, and the bites hurt a lot. Rats, on the other hand, which we're going to get to in a little bit, they don't hurt. They don't really bite. They can hurt you if they bite you. But rats are much nicer creatures. Rats look like the worst llooking creatures of all time. They look like the devil, right? They're not cute and cuddly, but they're actually the smartest, and they're actually the nicest animals. So when one gets out, you can almost just pick it up with your hands and it's not going to run away from you. Now this is what I call a small mouse. This is bigger than a hopper. This is small mice, and this is about as big as I usually go with my mice. Sometimes if my guy has an extra, overhaul of big, I guess you could say ex-breeder mice, I might go with those. But usually what I try to do is, this will be the biggest I go, and these are the ball pythons will get this, and some of the bigger boas. Then what I do is I try to transition to rats, okay? And the rats I start with, these would be considered rat pups. So a rat pup, okay, is still a pretty big sized rat. This is not a prey you're going to give to a baby boa or necessarily a baby ball python. These are two pretty big. The good thing is that they're, they have closed eyes and they're not really going to damage your snakes. But you could almost give these to like a mature male ball python if you had to. I mean, and this time I'll use these a lot of times in place of large mice if they're not available. Plus, it's a good way to get your ball pythons eating rats. If you constantly feed your ball pythons mice, a lot of times it's hard to switch them to rats later. And obviously, if you want to get a female ball python, big, you got to get them eating rats. So once I get them eating these pups, you got them hooked. Then you can go to what I call a small rat, and these small rats are, once again, they almost look like a big mouse. They're a little bigger. See, you can just pick these things up. These guys are really nice. They're not like mice. They don't bite. They're a little fast because they're babies, but they're kind of nice. Look, I'm not getting bit. And these are, once again, these are nice size to get your ball pythons eating. Once they eat this, you can get them into much, much bigger rats, and they're going to grow really fast. And like I said, once we go from these small rats, then we transition to the medium-sized rats. And this is a medium rat. Once you get your ball pythons eating medium rats, they're going to grow really fast. And they're going to get to breeder size much faster. It's hard to get them on medium rats, but once you get them up to that, you're set. That's the goal. So you start with, fuzzy mice. You then build up to bigger mice, slightly bigger mice, small mice I'd call. Then you go to rat pups. You go to small rats, and then you go to the medium rats. And once again, if one of these gets out, no big deal. Whoa. If one of these gets out, no big deal. They really are pretty cool, and like I said, they're pretty tame, and they don't bite, and they're really nice. And once again, I don't have to go chasing them around like a lunatic trying to catch one of these things. But obviously, you want to make sure you keep your tops on really well. I'll be feeding later, so I certainly don't want to leave any of these open because invariably I'll get escapees. And if you do get an escapee in your snake room, the best way to catch these things is glue traps. They're these big squares that have tons of glue. Once a rodent gets on there, there's no way it's getting off, okay? It's the greatest catch. You don't have to put mouse traps where you're going to wind up, getting your finger stuck in there, or one of my kids will get their finger stuck in there. These glue traps are amazing because let's face it, when you feed a lot of rodents to your snakes, you're going to lose a couple. A couple are going to get out. Every once in a while, I drop a tub and then I try to get them, corralled up, and invariably one gets away, and then I find it on a glue trap the next day. So once again, you got to be smart about how you feed your animals. If you have access to live is always better for ball pythons because they just readily take it. You don't have to sit there wiggling it. It's a much quicker thing. If you only have a couple snakes, then I recommend trying to get them on frozen thawed because it's a lot easier. But with a big collection, it's easier to feed live. And the key is picking the right size rodent. Once again, because rats are much bigger than mice, the quicker you can get your ball pythons and your snakes on rats, the easier. I find that carpets and boas will switch from mice to rats, no problem. Every once in a while you get one that sticks, but ball pythons are a little bit of a pain in the neck. They can be stuck on mice forever if you don't switch them. So try to get them on rats as quickly as possible if you have access to both. But it seems like mice seems to be the way to start them. If you start them on mice, once you get them eating, then you can do the switch. The key is get them eating first. If you try to get too aggressive with giving rats right off the bat and they don't like them and they're intimidated by the size, they're not going to eat. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this little feeding video that we did and this little advice I have for you. Everyone has their own system, and this is just what works for me and that I found over the years. I feed every Wednesday live. On Tuesday nights, I feed frozen thawed. And that's just the way I've been doing it. Obviously, maybe as the collection gets bigger, I might need to go to a second day, or third day, I should say. But it's working for me now. It's just a long day because what you do is you put the live in, and then you got to let it leave them in there for a little while. Then you got to come back and see. I don't like to leave big, medium rats in with my ball pythons overnight. The babies, I don't mind leaving like little fuzzies or something like that because they're not going to harm them. I could always get them the next day. And that's my system, So I got a lot of work still to do tonight. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your Wednesday. Tomorrow morning I'll be back and we'll have some more great stories. Make sure you turn on your notifications, subscribe, and hit that like button. I'll see you tomorrow morning.